Good afternoon and welcome to our Senior Living Smart Partner webinar. Today we welcome Doug Pruden and Terry Varvra from Customer Experience Partners. In May of 1993, an account manager sat in his creative director's office at a Madison Avenue advertising agency and voiced concern about the unwillingness of several large clients, who will now go nameless, to properly care for and therefore hold on to their existing customers. After about 30 minutes of listening to the rants, the creative director pulled a new book off his shelf and suggested that the account manager read it. The book provided what at the time was a unique and unheard of path to business success through the retaining existing customers, growing share of spending, and generating positive word of mouth. The book was Terry Varvra's After Marketing: How to Keep Customers for Life Through Relationship Marketing. Within 6 months, the account manager, Doug Pruden, had joined Marketing Metrics, Terry Varvra's marketing consulting firm. The two have now collaborated for nearly 20 years, first at Marketing Metrics and then at Ipsos Loyalty, and now Customer Experience Partners, challenging the status quo and developing new approaches to winning and keeping customers. Terry Varvra is a native of Southern California. He has authored 5 books on topics of customer loyalty and satisfaction, has lectured on subjects around the world, and holds a PhD in marketing from the University of Illinois. He began his career at the NBC television network and worked at several highly respected New York advertising agencies before founding his own firm, Marketing Metrics Incorporated. Doug Pruden is a Northeasterner whose background includes experience in public relations, advertising, database, and direct marketing and marketing consulting. Prior to joining Dr. Varvra, he worked for the American Cancer Society, BBDO's Advertising, and J. Walter Thompson. Terry and Doug have authored numerous magazine and journal articles and presented to industry conferences across the country. Together, they have served clients as diverse as Mercedes-Benz, LabCorp, Motorola, Allstate, Century 21, IBM, and Toys R Us. While not career senior living practitioners, they bring with them new and different approaches that can be applied to help executives like you monitor and manage word of mouth to fill apartments faster. Let me turn the webinar over to Terry and Doug. Feel free to send your questions or comments or tweet questions or comments at GetSLSmart or use hashtag SmartWebinar. Thank you. Doug and Terry, to you.
Welcome. Thank you, Renee. Thank you, Senior Living Smart, and thanks all of you who are joining us today. Just to help you along, this is Doug Pruden. I'm the guy on the left. You'll hear from Terry Varvra in a minute. We're going to be very practical in our discussion today. We are unapologetically marketers. We're assuming that if you're taking the time to participate in this webinar today, that you're running a great facility, but that maybe you're not getting quite all the positive word of mouth that you deserve, and therefore not filling apartments or units as quickly as you'd like to. We think we can offer you some help in facing that challenge. We're going to ask you 2 favors as we go through this. First, accept that our approaches may be different than some of the things you've heard in the past, and accept them with an open mind. And secondly, don't expect that to hear a lot about improvement processes like customer satisfaction. There's lots of different ways you can get feedback from customers. We have some of them listed here. Each one serves a different purpose, and the one we want to focus on today is word of mouth monitoring. We think that that's critically important to your business.
Hello, everyone. This is Terry. Let's consider some background on word of mouth. When we first started speaking with senior living facilities around the country about sales and marketing efforts, we generally heard something that runs along the lines of this quote: "Referrals from my residents and their family members are the best source of new business for my facility." Indeed, in a previous Seniors Living Smart webinar back in July, the webinar attendees actually in an on-the-air poll substantiated that. 43% of the attendees actually said that they got, or believed they got, more than half of their business from referrals from residents residents and family. Now, we don't want to get too demanding here or draw too many distinctions, but when you think about it, we'd like to draw a bit of a contrast. Referrals, what we heard in the verbatim there, are what we think characterize what doctors might do. Doctors might refer a patient to a medical specialist. On the other hand, critics and other experts frequently make recommendations, like you to try a new restaurant. But when friends and neighbors and relatives and co-workers offer their valuable opinion, that's word of mouth. And word of mouth is far more potent than referrals or recommendations. It's personal, it's accorded credibility, and therefore it makes a huge impact. The good news is that it really overwhelms referrals and recommendations in its sheer volume. And even more importantly, it can influence individuals considering your facilities in every step along their path to making a decision. Their awareness of your facility, their consideration of it, how likely they are to commit to your facility, and the final decision.
Now, word of mouth, forget the gentleman with the beer for a minute. Word of mouth is great, but word of mouth comes in different shapes, forms, and fashions. Despite the quote that a lot of you have heard, which is, I don't care what you say about me as long as you spell my name correctly, which could have been attributed to anybody from W.C. Fields to Elizabeth Taylor, is really not really what you care about, because word of mouth can be just as good as bad as it can be good. So there's different flavors of word of mouth, if you will, when you think about it. There's bad word of mouth. We're all familiar with that. Somebody writes an unfair claim about you. Somebody says something misunderstanding about you. So it's bad word of mouth. You don't want that, obviously. There's good word of mouth. Good word of mouth is nice, sort of nice to have. You know, I might say, gee, my mother moved into Arbor Glen, and it's a nice facility. It's not going to do you a whole lot of good. The best example we can give you is what you really want is better word of mouth. Better word of mouth is memorable, it's shareable, it's impactful. Back in July at a Senior Living Smart webinar, Donna Cutting of Red Carpet Learning Systems told a story which I thought is a great example of this. She talked about a facility that had a terrific culture. They had trained their staff good morning to make sure they called residents by name. They were very careful when a new resident was moving in. They had the carts there. They had everything they could do to help make that move-in easier. They even had gone so far as to find out what kind of flowers the resident liked, to find out what kind of music the resident liked, to find out what snacks they liked, and they provided all those for them. But even a step further than that, they would then check in with the resident after a day of moving. In the case that Donna spoke of, the family was checked in. The son-in-law said, gee, everything was great. You were really helpful. The only thing that could make it better would be a nice cold beer right now after a lot of work this afternoon. The facility was smart enough to have somebody run down the street and come back with a cold beer. That's a memorable, shareable, impactful move-in experience that generates positive word of mouth. Now, if you think about word of mouth and wonder why is it so important to you, this table from Nielsen, who are the advertising research people, gives you a pretty good idea. If you look a little below the middle there, you'll see things like ads in newspaper, ads on radio, which you might do locally, ads in magazines. The trust that consumers have in that is pretty low. But if you look up to the top, you see the area we're really concerned about, and that is people trust. 92% trust completely or trust somewhat recommendations of people they know. That's word of mouth. 70% trust completely or somewhat consumer opinions they see posted online. As Terry mentioned earlier, we consider word of mouth to be both written and spoken word of mouth. Now, there's a couple of myths. We said we wanted you to step away from some things you believe in. A lot of people would say, well, word of mouth, yeah, that's great. That's what I get for doing things well. But you know what? It's kind of amorphous. It's squishy. It's I can't get my hands around it. I can't really measure it. I can't manage it at all. And it's simply a reward for a job well done. We would say, no, it doesn't just happen. Some of it might just happen, but word of mouth takes more than that. And to gain a strategic advantage, maybe against larger spending competitors, you need to monitor it and manage it. There's several different kinds of word of mouth. Word of mouth certainly occurs online, and maybe you've heard a tremendous amount about that. It seems like every time you open any of the marketing journals, at least we're hearing word of mouth. Oh yeah, that's that social media stuff. That's Twitter and Facebook and all. And we'd say yes, that's public social media. But there's also something that we would say is private social media, which is also part of word of mouth, and that's these face-to-face conversations that your residents and their family members have. That's phone calls that they make. It's emails. It's text messages. And despite all that you hear about what's going on online, in fact, according to research by a Wharton professor, 93% of it still takes place online. We've seen other numbers that are in the high 80s, but any number of studies suggest that really word of mouth is still this offline conversation that's taking place. Another myth that we hear about is that we already know what's being written and said about our facility. Research that's been done suggests that yes, about 5% of what's being said and done is actually heard by management. That really word of mouth is more like an iceberg. And there's several reasons why only 5% reaches you as management. First is a lot of what you hear back about word of mouth really comes from family and friends. They love you. They don't want to tell you the bad stories. They want to encourage you. They want to make you feel good, and so they tell you what they think you want to hear. Second thing is you're a busy person. Your staff might hear some things, but say, well, gee, I really, so and so is just too busy. They don't need to hear every little comment that comes along the way. The third issue is shooting the messenger. Our culture isn't particularly good at this. Most managers or most people have learned along the way that you bring bad news, that either means you get a new assignment, it means you get in trouble for it, and so there's not a lot of desire to do this. Monitoring it, you say you monitor it. Well, some people do monitor online today, but as we just said, that's only a small portion of overall word of mouth, and even then it's a question of what should you monitor. And the final point is that satisfied customers, unfortunately for you, are less likely to speak.
Well, it is certainly true that what you don't know can really hurt you. And that's what we were alluding there to. Word of mouth that's out in your community about your facility. And if, through all of the reasons that Doug just went through, if that true word of mouth that's circulating isn't getting to you, if you're not really aware of it, then it can hurt you. It can hurt the future marketability of your facility. So without a truly representative, and what we really mean by that is an objective measurement process for capturing and analyzing word of mouth, you can be fooling yourself and not actually sure of what's being said about you. But if you go to the other extreme, the path we'd like you all to consider, with an intelligent, objective process for periodically monitoring word of mouth about your facility, you can harness its full potential, meaning that the good things that you discover that are being said about your facility, you can amplify, reinforce in the way you conduct your business, reinforce in marketing messages, and things that you might not have heard about that could be impeding your success, negatives, you can correct those. So word of mouth monitoring is, we think, a very essential component for any business. And if you think about it, local businesses are probably more subject to word of mouth than national businesses like Nabisco or Campbell Soup. So, quantifying word of mouth. Doug showed you a number of myths. It's squishy, it's unmeasurable. Let's wipe those off the table. We've had substantial experience in customer satisfaction. As Doug mentioned and Renee mentioned, we've written a few books on it. We really believe in customer or resident satisfaction. But resident satisfaction is really more about process improvement, operational standards within your facilities, meeting quality control standards. It's not really about the nuances of your facility. What we're talking about here is the kind of process that gets a handle on what current residents and their families are saying about your facility to friends, relatives, coworkers, neighbors, and even strangers. The sort of process that helps you objectively learn about what's being said by your residents is what you really need to put into place. Now, we have a relatively simple measurement process. We're going to it's not a closed box or a black box. We're going to tell you what's in it. We think that it is a very reasonable way of listening to the word of mouth that your customers and prospective customers are communicating about your facility. The Buzz Barometer is a process that surveys customers and has them report on their own behavior, who they talked to, what they said. And most importantly, beyond the social media, it talks about, or it attends to, what is said in private private interactions, face-to-face conversations that never make the internet. Word of mouth isn't one-dimensional. As you work to manage it and quantify its return to your facility, you need to consider and include all of its various facets or factors. We like to think about word of mouth as comprised of at least 3 major components. Actually, in the next slide, you'll see a few more, but here are the 3 most important components of word of mouth. Its quality, its directionality, and its content. Now, by quality, we really mean its tonality. Is it good or bad, positive or negative? Its frequency, how frequently is it out there? Reach, we're going to talk about a phenomenal aspect of word of mouth called the multiplier effect. One sponsor of a resident tells 2 other potential residents. They each tell 2 more potential residents, and so on and so forth, and the word of mouth snowballs. So you have tremendous reach capabilities. And in terms of quality, we can talk about the medium, how the word of mouth is spread. Is it face-to-face? Is it on a posting, a blog? Is it an online evaluation or testimonial? Directionality is another fascinating dimension of word of mouth. And that really has to do with an activity involved in word of mouth. Is it so energized within a resident or a resident's family that they actively go out and tell a lot of people? That's active communication. Or is it just passive? Does it sit hidden in someone's psyche until someone says, hey, what do you think about the senior facility across town? Finally, content. Exactly what is being said? What are the key messages that are being disseminated about your facility? And on a a more judgmental basis for you, how important are those various issues? Prioritize them from the most meaningful and most important thing that's being said about your facility to the least important. Now here's a dashboard that I mentioned earlier, our tool, the buzz barometer. We like to make findings from a word-of-mouth monitoring process very graphic, very easily understood. And so here we have the dashboard, or an example of a dashboard from a buzz barometer study. And this complicates things a little bit because we're not just taking a snapshot read, but we're looking at a longitudinal read. In this case, a facility has been monitored over 2 quarters. So the light blue arrows indicate where we were in quarter 1, the dark blue in quarter 2. So you can see that from quarter 1 to quarter 2, the word of mouth about this facility has gotten increasingly more positive. It's gotten a little bit dropping down to the next section, directionality. It's gotten a little bit more passive. The multiplier effect, how many people are being reached, has stayed about the same. The modality has shifted a little bit from broadband, maybe posted on the internet, over to a more personal, perhaps face-to-face modality. And then a dimension I didn't talk about before, how much experience are the communicators judged to have? Well, in this case, those people who are talking about the facility are perceived to be a little bit more knowledgeable. And in that case, that means that their word of mouth may be attended to or given a little bit more credibility.
Now, Terry's just talked about measuring word of mouth, and if you do that, you find out a couple of things. One, you'll probably find out a couple of critical negative things that need to be fixed in your process, your training, whatever. And that we'll put that aside for now. But the other things you might find out are some very key positive messages that you can leverage, that you can express to more people. And one of the third thing you might find out from measuring word of mouth is that you don't have quite as much as you thought you did. And so what we'd like to take just a couple more minutes to talk about is how do you manage word of mouth. There are what we would say are 3 key ingredients, or 3 necessary ingredients to get people talking, writing, speaking, calling about your facility, to get you greater awareness, to get you greater consideration, to get you maybe greater purchase consideration. And they are content, they are motivation, and they are opportunity. By content, we're talking about a story to tell, something to share. You know, unhappy residents, unhappy family members are going to be great at content. They're going to have a story to tell about how horrible they were treated, or how something went wrong, or how something fell apart. But the residents and their family members may not be quite so strong on the positive side. As executives in facilities, you know what a great job your kitchen is doing, your building and grounds, your medical care, your transportation, your entertainment, whatever it is. You know every detail of those. Your residents and their family members maybe don't know it quite so well. And we've seen this happen in so many different industries. You know, we've worked in the auto industry, and every executive in the auto industry knows every detail about a car. They know the engine displacement, they know all the details.
And they assume that customers are equally as intelligent.
They assume that customers know everything, where we found that customers many times can't change the clock when we go to daylight savings time. So there's a lot of differences there. We've seen insurance people who assume, because they know everything that's in the policy, that customers read them. We think the same thing happens with senior living facility residents and their family members. They don't quite have a story to tell. They don't have any content, therefore they don't talk to other people. We think similarly there's an issue of opportunity, and we would say that you have a couple different areas of opportunity you can give to your folks. One, if you make the content that you provide to them something that we'd like to say that people can laugh, love, or learn about, that people want to share things that have those kind of messages, and that helps. So whatever your content is. A second area is you can tell them where they can share things. There's probably several different websites that evaluate senior living facilities in your area. Your happy residents may never have looked there, they never have thought about writing there. You can encourage them to do it. We don't mean bribe them, we just mean encourage them, tell them the opportunity, tell them why it's important to share their feelings with others. The third thing that we would say is something we call a conversation catalyst. Terry mentioned before that there's two kinds of word of mouth. There's word of mouth that someone asks you about, and then there's word of mouth that you have to wait until you're ready to talk about it. We would say a conversation catalyst is something that goes out there and shows people where the resident lives, or shows people that you have some connection with a facility. We'll give you an extreme example. We worked for a company that made small airplanes, and we would go to their facility, and they have them sitting there beautifully lighted and everything. When you go to get an airplane, you have to go pick it up. You don't wait for it to come to your door. So we would always tell them, take a picture of that person getting the keys to their airplanes, send it to them, have it mounted so it's on their den wall or their office wall, so that somebody walks in and can say to them, hey, do you own that kind of airplane? Now you want to do something like that. You want a conversation catalyst for your facilities so that name is out there, so somebody can say, oh, could you tell me about it?
A golf shirt for senior living facilities.
Right, a shopping bag, whatever, something that has the name. The third thing is motivation, and we would say that you need to provide that in fact an unhappy customer is motivated. They're going to go out and tell people what's wrong, what they're unhappy about. A well-satisfied, you met my expectations type customer needs to have this content, needs to have this opportunity, because they don't have the same motivation. You need to give them the emotional feelings that make them want to go talk to others. Okay. Now, what does it take to, let's kind of an overall for how do you generate positive word of mouth. The first thing is kind of table stakes. You have to provide a high level of service. You've got to be exceptional in what you're doing. But the second, to truly get word of mouth customers, you almost have to go do the above and beyond. The example I gave you earlier about providing the cold beer, the staff that is trained to say good morning to a resident by name, those kind of things that are just a little extra that give people that wow, they cared about me. They had those flowers in my apartment when I moved in. My goodness, you have to have shareable content. It's got to be relevant. It's got to be compelling. It can't be self-serving. It's got to be something that wasn't there before. You have to provide training and to conduct programs so you have that culture within your facility. And we're certainly not the first ones to talk about this, but you won't get positive word of mouth if you don't have it. You need some kind of conversation catalyst. And the last thing, and the one that's often forgotten by many businesses, is you don't want to forget about your staff, that they need to be educated just as your residents and their family members are.
Well, word of mouth is currently one of our major passions, but as you think about customer experience partners, if there's a role for us in any part of your management future, we offer a broad range of marketing research techniques, many of which we've been on the forefront in developing. Customer experience or resident experience mapping, often called blueprinting, action planning, which is a way of taking results from surveys like a customer satisfaction survey and actually putting the information to work. Very oftentimes we find programs like customer satisfaction are engaged in almost to make the CEO happy, and the scores go on the CEO's wall, but they never get down to the kitchen or to the house cleaning level where people are hopefully rewarded for the good work they do. So action planning is a way of acting on the information that we find. Customer delight measurement is our brand of customer satisfaction. We found that merely satisfied customers won't translate to bottom line business results. You have to have delighted customers, and we, pardon the expression, we're delighted to talk about that anytime. Finally, our approach is straightforward, no smoke and mirrors. Hopefully you've heard about our credentials. Here's an example of the books and some of the articles that we've written.
Renee, we'd be happy to answer some questions now if there are any. I'll let you sort through things and tell us.
Okay, yeah, we have a few questions here. If we find negative, unfair reviews posted online about one of our facilities, what can we do to get them removed?
Okay. A question that we often hear, because yes, all it takes is one or two negative reviews to
sour the bucket.
To sour the bucket, but also just to get everybody upset. And you can't make negative reviews go away, but what you can do is by generating positive word of mouth, you generate more positive
to dilute the negatives that will remain there, unfortunately, in perpetuity. But the more active you are in creating positive word of mouth, those few negatives will soon be far diluted.
Right. If you have if there's 4 reviews and 2 of them are negative, that's a problem for you. If you have 2 negative reviews, but you have 15 reviews and the others are positive, most people will look at them and say, gee, maybe somebody had a little bit of a personal problem here or something like that. Yeah, you can't please everybody all the time. But you can't make them go away. We keep reading about people trying to sue people and everything else. Real uphill battle, probably not worth it. You're probably a whole lot better off trying to generate more positive word of mouth, more positive reviews.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes. You mentioned that your buzz barometer is a survey, but how do you actually go about conducting it?
Well, that's a great question. The process does depend upon actively seeking out either residents or residents' family members, engaging them in a short interview, either telephone or online. And we have a very strict protocol of taking them through a series of questions that populates those components or dimensions of word of mouth that I spoke to before. What was being said? Did they actually promote it, or did they respond to a question they were asked? How many people did they talk to, etc., so that we can percolate up from a reasonably good sample size results that are truly representative of what's being said about a facility in the facilities market.
And I think one of the things about the survey process that's critically important is you have to be able to convince the residents and the residents' family members that this is an anonymous study, that whatever they say is not going to come back to haunt them, that in fact what they report will help to make the resident experience better in the future, and that there will be no negative repercussions, nothing you have to worry about. And part of the reason why we think it's important for a third party or someone like us to execute the study is so that they know that the facility is not watching every word they say.
We're running a little long, Renee. If there are any other questions.
I have one more I would like to ask. We kind of got a couple different versions of it. how are you going to get residents or their immediate family to really tell what they feel about your facility?
Well, that's a question we get asked a lot, and it I guess is one of the reasons that only a certain number of people go into marketing research, and of those, only a certain number are really successful. It's in a knack that you learn and you develop for first establishing credibility for your survey, and then in a very respectful way, letting them know, as Doug just mentioned earlier, that the results are anonymous, that their honest opinions will be used in a helpful, constructive way, that they won't be endangered at all or receive argumentative phone calls as a result. And you find after this process begins, and one of the things we like to do after a process has run a little bit is report back to a group, the residents in a facility. Here are some things that we've learned in our word of mouth explorations, and some of the actions we've taken here, so that the process gets validity, feeds on itself, and gains a respectability all of its own.
And I think one of the things that we did not mention earlier is, in doing this, the first contact about a word of mouth study comes from the facility. It comes from the executive director or whatever, the president, saying, hey, we've retained a company that's going to be coming to you and asking some questions. We're not, also that they reassure, we're not going to see your exact words. We're going to see it all as a group. We ask you to participate. Here's a good reason why. But you're going to be contacted by them. It's not even going to be directly through us. So you kind of put yourself out there supporting it, but you also put yourself as being at arm's length from seeing the individual results. And I think that's important for it. Renee?
We hope that everyone enjoyed our comments and learned a little bit more about word of mouth.
And if anybody has any questions, or you have them after Renee, you can forward them to us, and we'll be happy to get back to individuals, or people can contact us directly.
Absolutely. And as you can see on the screen, we have the exclusive offer for all the attendees that will get an introductory buzz barometer assessment, and also the 6-month word of mouth management engagement. These are great things. I'm really appreciative of what you had to offer the senior living communities for monitoring and managing word of mouth. It was really well informative for everyone. Thank you again.
Thank you, Renee.
Thank you.
Have a good afternoon.